Okay, let's reconvene and move on to our next topic. Welcome back to our public observers. We're going to turn to audit evidence right now, and I'm going to turn it over to Sue to lead us through agenda items 5A and I think it's 5B. Right. 5 and 5A. Okay, Sue.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, and welcome to the next instalment of audit evidence. So can we take the next slide, please? And a picture, just because we've got one. Just to highlight who the task force members are. So, obviously, thanks to the team, Greg, Eric, and Ado, and the lead staff, Kalina and Ida. And throughout the process, we've had some input in the background from Billy and also from Dan. So in terms of activities since we last spoke in December, we met in the IFAC office, which you'll recognise there in February, and we've had a fair amount of coordination in that period since December as well, particularly with the risk response work stream of the integrated project and the IAASB staff. And Kalina and I also attended working sessions of the technology working group or consultation group. So a fair amount of involvement with some of the different groups, which obviously is relevant as we move into the integrated project. Next slide, please. In terms of the milestones, you're probably aware of this, but we've gone from the information gathering process back in 2019 all the way through to the issue of the exposure draft. And what we've been doing in the last few months is the deliberation of the feedback in response to the ED comments. As Tom highlighted in his introduction, the board approved in December the strategy and work programme, which anticipates the integrated approach for audit evidence and risk response after this meeting. And the intention with this meeting really is that we will get to a position where what we achieved so far represents the pre-finalisation holding package, and work will be paused until we resume the work in accordance with the project proposal for the integrated project. Next slide, please. So a reminder of the intentions for the outcomes of the proposed ISA 500 that will most significantly contribute to enhancing consistency in practice and modifying auditor behaviour. We've highlighted consistently that there's a package of measures, so there's not any sort of particular individual things, but taken together as a whole, the expectation is that the changes that we propose will enhance consistency and modified behaviour. And we've remained mindful of those outcomes as we've been working on the updates and the responses to ISA 500. Next slide, please. So now we start getting into the final pieces and the changes that we've made since we met in December. So the changes that you're seeing are in agenda item 5A, and they reflect the task force's responses to the feedback from the board during the December meeting and comments that we received directly offline, as well as inputs that we've received from the coordination with our IAASB. We've highlighted that we've grayed out certain paragraphs in agenda item 5A, particularly those relating to the objective of technology-focused modernisation, and that includes the conditional requirement when the use of ATT is involved. And we're not specifically asking for comments on those paragraphs. Clearly, that's something that will be revisited once we've worked through the technology posture and so on that we talked about earlier. Obviously, if anyone has observations on those paragraphs, then you're very welcome to send them offline, but we're not looking at that. You'll also see that Section 3 of the issues paper includes further discussion of some of the matters related to technology and the use of ATT. And Appendix 2 of the document has got a discussion of the material on the stand back. That's really part of the exercise. As we come to this position where we're pausing our work, there were areas that we recognise will be considered as part of the IAASB's other work streams. So we're not seeking direction at this time, but what we did want to do was make sure that the discussions and the thoughts were recorded and shared with the board so that they are available for the future work streams. As we discussed in December, the Audit Evidence Task Force will undertake further engagement with stakeholders on certain of the changes that have been proposed, such as the thresholds for relevance and reliability and accuracy and completeness. And we will leverage some of the output for the integrated projects. And we also have a session with the national standard setters in May. Yeah. So that's where we are. So coming back to probably one of our favourite topics today, definitions, because we all like a good definition. So just picking out, we have probably 3 slides here on the areas that we've been working for as the task force and taking the feedback that we had previously. So I'll just walk through those. You've got them all the detail in the issues paper as well. The definition of audit evidence, we have clarified that audit procedures include evaluating relevance and reliability of information, but that's been moved to application material in line with the direction we got in December. The threshold for the attributes of relevance and reliability, we have adopted the spectrum approach. We've reflected that there is a threshold of the application, which we think emphasises the need to consider all of the attributes, but it focuses on those that are of most significance to meet the intended purpose of the audit procedures, and we feel that allows for scalability of the work effort. I have had a couple of questions offline because in paragraph 9 we refer to of most significance to meet the intended purpose, and then paragraph 10 talks about significant attributes, and there wasn't an intention to make those 2 things completely different. So if that is something that is causing people issues, it's something that we're aware we could look at. So the intention is that it's a process that just runs through from start to finish. On accuracy and completeness, we have retained the essential material to emphasise that accuracy and completeness are ordinarily significant attributes to meet the intended purpose of the audit procedures for information that's coming from internal sources. That was something from the feedback from the regulators in particular was considered as a particularly important element. And then you'll be delighted to know that the standback has gone. So that was in response to the feedback that we had last time, and that sort of knocks on into the objective as well. So that's been removed. Next slide, lovely, thank you. And then in relation to other changes that you'll see in the document that you've got, we have enhanced some of the linkages with the IAASB codes for on the role and mindset in response to the feedback we received from IAASB. You will see that there are some further streamlinings of the application material. We said before that we were working through that in response to feedback, and some areas have been streamlined a bit. And we have enhanced the application material about the intended purpose of the audit procedures. So if we take the next slide, that's a summary of the changes that we are really asking for input on at this meeting. And then, as I say, we'll take any other comments on the areas that we're not discussing. We can hold those for when the standard comes back. Tom, over to you.
Okay, so we're getting your feedback on the proposed update. I understand there was a lot of discussion this morning that may impact future thinking. Let's put that aside for now. let's really just focus on what's presented, recognizing that we will come back to technology issues and the way it may impact some of our drafting of the standard. So is that fair? Okay. Josephine.
Thank you. Supportive of just trying to be as quick as possible, supportive of the definition, the doubts, and the stand back. Thank you. In terms of 9 and 10, notwithstanding, I already put on public record, I'm not comfortable with significance at all. I think now the way it's been written, there isn't actually a requirement anymore. I feel like we've lost something because now we're saying you consider the significance. Well, that's quite useful, but the point is that you're considering them in making your evaluation. And I feel like something's lost by perhaps shifting the words to the front. It doesn't seem to make sense to me now, because before, in the exposure draft, we actually had it slightly differently. We said you consider the attributes that are applicable in the circumstances given the intended purpose. So it's the attributes that are applicable in the circumstances build it up to do something, an action. And I feel now we've shifted things around. We've lost that actual action to actually pull them into your thought process. So I don't know if others aren't seeing that, it might be me, but maybe a thought on there. And yes, other than that, I'm comfortable with the other changes you've made in the document, except for the point about significance. Thank you.
Joy.
Thanks, Sue. And I did have a point about that interaction between paragraph 9 and 10 that you've already referred to, primarily because I think in 9, when you talk about the significance of the attributes, then they're all by definition significant. And then you get to paragraph 10 and you're supposed to somehow categorize them into significant, which was problematic. But I think that you've already highlighted that and you're going to take a look at that. With respect to the other changes you made, I don't really have any comments. I was comfortable with where you were on accuracy and completeness and some of the other changes, as well as removing the stand back. So thank you.
Robert?
Yeah, I would also like to refer to paragraph 10. The second sentence refers to sources internal from the entity. And I don't really get what would be the impact. Would you have to perform with respect to the significance as it is outlaid here, risk assessment? I mean, the auditor receives hundreds of thousands of internal information. Some of them might be significant, but some others might be just ancillary. Yeah, and maybe you could somehow phrase this or make a distinction here for this purpose. Thank you.
I think that last sentence we put that back in because of some of the regulatory concerns.
It was, and it's essentially bringing back what's in extant.
So it's no different than what exists already. Right. Well, I'm not saying the whole requirement, Josephine, but that element is proper. Right. So you want to respond to?
I'm just drawing breath because that's even quicker than I was anticipating. So I mean, thank you for the feedback. As I say, I think we're conscious we need to just take a look at fine tuning 9 and 10. And Josephine, your point is taken. Yeah, Robert, that is bringing back I think the existing requirement that had moved to application material and has now come back into the context of the standard as a whole. Tom, if that's it, I think obviously the task force can take a look at those final comments. But do you want us to go take anything more, or just go into the next steps?
Next steps.
Next steps. Next slide, then, please. Excellent. Right. Conforming and consequential amendment. I've forgotten about that. I thought I was going into the way forward, but no. Of course, there's conforming and consequential amendments to deal with. So you've seen that in the package that you've got. The changes that you will see to what you've had before are updates to reflect the revised drafting for the wording that we've changed, to enhance some of the coherence with some of the other ISAs. And something that came up this morning is remote observation techniques, and you'll see that we've recognised that within inventory counting. And we had previously, because of the anticipated timeline, had amendments that related to fraud and going concern, but obviously because of the change to the anticipated timeline for 500, we are proposing taking those out at this stage. So I think that's it on conforming amendments. And I think we've got a question on the next slide for any comments on conforming amendments.
Sashika?
Thank you. And thank you, sir, for your explanation. I have a comment on the change you made on ISA 541 A5 with regard to remote observation. As I commented, I really support reflecting the use of remote observation tool into either 501 to modernize the standard. But I do not think we should amend paragraph A5 as suggested at this point, because the proposed sentence may give a kind of wrong impression that the remote observation tool can simply replace physical observation in all circumstances without any necessary consideration, let's say if there is fraud risk, etc., etc. So my suggestion is perhaps we could consider in new project to modernize the targeted standard in the 500 series rather than just putting that sentence simply right now. That's my comment. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. I think that's all on conforming consequential amendments.
Okay, thanks, Sachiko. Way forward. There we go. So as I said before, this is designed to be the pre-finalisation package for while the board undertakes its deliberations in relation to the integrated project. As we explained in the milestones, obviously, then beyond 2024, this project will move into the integrated project, and obviously there'll be a lot of work on the risk response piece over the coming months. And we will undertake the stakeholder engagement over some of the changes that have been proposed. As I said earlier, we've documented some of the discussions that we've had, because we were working on this for quite a long time before the integrated project was anticipated, and therefore we felt it was valuable to make the thinking and some of the options that we've been considering available for the board and for the new projects. So obviously the task force, as we stay at this point, will continue to support the information gathering for the risk response work stream and provide input and support all of that. So I think probably, Tom, with that, it's just for me to thank the task force, the staff, and the board for their input.
Just for the record, when you talk about stakeholder engagement, you have this in the paper, but with a particular emphasis on some of the regulatory community who had expressed some concern about some of the requirements, and sort of get a sense and have a dialogue with them about the way forward on this too, right? Nod your heads. Okay, that's very good. And obviously, we also have to consider the impacts from a technology perspective now, based upon our morning's discussion too. Anyone else want to comment on audit evidence? Wendy?
So remind me what we're going to do in this quiet period. So and one question I have really, because I didn't chime in again and pile on 9 and 10, because I think you got the advanced messages and two other people said it here. But I wonder if there's any appetite to test further or do any reach out to make sure when we finally get to actually adopting the standard, it's completely understood. Because in my reach out sessions, still had a lot of confusion related to 9 and 10.
So I think the intention is to use some of the outreach that we have lined up to specifically test that. As Tom said, the feedback was coming very strongly from the regulatory community. I think so. We will use those opportunities, and it's not just the that kind of thing. We've got the national standard setters, which will pick up. I know some of the constituents you're talking about. So yeah, that will happen.
Okay. Any other observations on audit evidence? Janine, any advice, observations you want to give us?
Well, I think the things that were just discussed, like outreach again in the coming period, to test what we have now. In particular, I think what is in the requirements versus what is in the application material. That is also an area of interest from the regulators. And there were also a lot of comments that came in on the volume of application material, but also there were certain concepts in there that some thought that could be maybe better be addressed directly as a requirement. So therefore, I think it's very valuable to also start having the discussion and do outreach, ask how they look at it on this draft. Personally, I think that this is not the easiest standard to read and to understand what it all means, because of the terms, the definitions, and the going back and forth from the requirements to the application material. So I think it's good to do that in the meantime. And of course, the technology piece, as said before, is also something work to be done, but that is known to everyone. Not only new technologies, but also risks that maybe, particularly in this standard, like the risk of over-reliance when you're evaluating at the towards the end of the audit work, whether you have sufficient appropriate audit evidence, that also plays a role there. So looking forward to the rest of the project. Thank you.
I could just respond quickly to something you said, Janine. I mean, that piece about the balance of the requirements and application material, I think one of the things that's going to be interesting with the work we're doing on technology is by defining what the approach is to technology. There's an awful lot of material that we built in that was very, very responsive to the feedback, but it potentially unbalances. So by taking that step back and thinking about the approach to technology, if it stays there, then it's a conscious decision that that's the right place for it to be, rather than perhaps just feeling that we were just piling on. So I think that will be interesting to inform.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Janine. Okay, we're gonna close this session for all the public observers who were anxiously waiting for an hour and a half on audit evidence. I apologize. We were so efficient and the task force was so good that we finished our work in less than a half hour on this. This, as you know, audit evidence is not done by any stretch of the imagination. So we'll come back to our board, but we're going to